Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Becker, school board member, committee chair for education. Can everyone hear me okay? There are some very good acoustics in this room, so we should be okay as long as you project a little bit. I remember that despite it not being a loud game, I remember when chess had to be discontinued in the library because even a little bit of excitement was a little bit too loud. This was back when we were still in this, at the LMC. This was the main LMC when I was in high school, you know, I don't know, 12, 15, something like that. I don't know, years ago. It was a while ago. What I'd like to do is, Beth, if you could please do roll call.
Absolutely. Warren?
Here.
Welch?
Here.
Becker?
Here.
Great.
So we have all three board members are here, and we have our two interested student council representatives here, and we'll do introductions by name going around the table right after. I think we do open forum. Anyone who wishes to speak from the public as open forum, you'll have 5 minutes to address the board. This is an open forum, it's not agenda specific, so it could be on any topic that you like. I have a single form if anyone changes their mind and wants to speak from the public, if you could just take one of the yellow forms in the back. Otherwise, excuse me, we have one registered speaker. And we have Noah Becker, if you'd like to come up to the side table here. And all right, if you could state your name and address, and then you will have 5 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. I'm Noah Becker. I live at 1254 Reed Street, Greenwood, Wisconsin, 50203. So I'm here to talk a little bit about IB. We only have one agenda item, so that limits my tirade slightly. I won't go too long. So I reviewed the documents beforehand, and I want to first say I took some IB courses here before I graduated this spring. So I like to think I know a little bit about it, even if I wasn't the best student at it. I do know something about it. So I support a lot of the plan. I think IB expansion makes a lot of sense at West, and I am excited to see how the careers program develops. I think that's some really cool opportunities that we could be offering students here. So I hope that the committee in its proceedings on IB considers the potential benefits to the careers program being added here in the way it moves forward, and while it considers the future of IB at the school. I also support making the continuum from primary all the way up through graduation a bit more solid. I think that makes a lot of sense. However, I think being realistic in the way that that's implemented is a big part of how that will be successful when we do it at West. All the teachers know we're at a very unique environment here, with West being a neighborhood attendance area school. A lot of IB schools you got to apply to, or you got to apply to get into the IB program. And here you're kind of just given an opportunity just by virtue of living in this neighborhood, or you can choice it. So I think making a essentially I'm worried that shepherding all students through IB could be problematic. IB is a super rigorous program, and that's why this type of environment is so unique to West. Most schools don't do this. They make you apply, they make you test, they make you prove that you're able to do it. And here, we just give the opportunity, which I support. I think it's great. However, if we're going to extend this continuum, I'm worried about its effects on EP and dual credit courses, and I hope that that's considered in the way that these changes are implemented. Especially when, as some of you are unfortunately aware, when you had to listen to I think I went for almost 40 minutes in front of the board one time on middle year's program in math specifically. I don't think we should damage current course offerings when possible and replace it with IB because of the rigor of the the IB program. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to just get rid of some more standard, if you will, math offerings or any offerings. And I am a little bit nervous about that when I read through the plan. Physics and chemistry specifically are courses that I think are super important to take if you take a more traditional science pathway, you get chemistry, physics, you get some of everything. And so if we make that all IB, and you can only get 2 years of one or the other, unless you want to take both IB physics, which was, I took IB physics, I'll just say that, and IB chemistry at the same time. That's pretty rigorous. So I think I think that as West moves forward, I would hope that all students are considered in the way that's done, and we're not just shepherding people through IB, but rather we're using IB to help the students that are here and to really maximize IB's potential to advance rigor and advance the coursework that students are doing while not getting rid of some of the more traditional science offerings, which have been around for a long time and are still pretty good for quite a majority of students. And I hope that we, if the committee is at all able to find solutions that allow for some of those more traditional courses or those AP or dual credit courses to stay here while adding in IB, I would hope that the committee would consider that as part of the new plan that it develops. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to be a public speaker from the public before we close out the forum? Okay, then open forum is closed. What I'd like to do is just have introductions. I think a lot of people know faces, but some don't and have masks. So we'll go around the table first, and then we'll go down the sides as well. So we'll start with
Nancy Welch.
and I know people know what your role is, but if you just want to say it.
School board member.
Thank you.
Megan John, SC member. Stephanie Rios, also SC.
And if, in case somebody doesn't know what that stands for, is this possible?
That's Intercity Student Council.
Thank you. So they're the two student reps today for the committee.
Andy Stevenson, I'm the NYP coordinator here at West.
Jennifer Burkhardt, the NYP coordinator at Franklin School.
Greg Lilly, the principal of Franklin Middle School.
Michelle Jacobson, principal here at West High School.
Chapel, what grade are you in, Vicente? Or what grade will you be in next year?
I'm going to be in 3rd grade.
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm Chris Gordon, the principal of Chapel.
I'm Jackie Rostow, the coordinator at Chapel.
Steve Early, Superintendent of Schools.
Beth Jones, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent of Schools and Board of Education.
Vicki Byer, Deputy Superintendent.
Okay, and then if we could start over here, and we'll work that way, and then we'll come back around.
I'm Ms. Sarnish, math department at West.
I'm Lindsay Ricco, I teach math here at West.
Denise Rankin, I teach math here at West.
Dexter McNabb, Associate Principal here at West.
Michael Hoffman, Associate Principal at West.
Judy Wiegand, Executive Director for Secondary Schools.
Boyd Hoffman, the senior at West.
And I'm Isaiah Duma, also a senior at West.
Noah introduces us to the public speaker, and
I'm Taylor Savannah, I'm Trevor's mom.
okay.
I'm Kelly Shada, work teacher at Chapel. Marie Silvey, I just graduated from Chapel. Vanessa Cortez, Secretary at Chapel. I'm Jeanine Calloway, I'm a parent of 2 Chapel students.
I'm Gabriel Reister, I'm going to West next year.
Zach Baker, Music Department Chair and Band Teacher at Franklin.
Eric Manuel, Board President.
Peggy Sorensen, I'm the advisor for the NFC Student Council.
Laura Floyd, Board of Education. I'm Lily Rowe, I'm the Executive Assistant to the Deputy Superintendent of
Okay. And I'm Andrew Becker, School Board member and Chair of the Education Committee. So we'll go ahead and the intent is to have about half the time remain for presentation, and then the rest of the time for more focused on questions, but hopefully there can be a little bit of interchange if there's a short a short question that members have in the middle. But I guess I would like who would like to begin?
So I'll start. We are excited to be in front of you guys for the first educational committee to give you an update of our IB program across the continuum. And we felt the best way to start to share that is some testimonials from staff, students, and parents about the implementation. And then we will be going through our action plan with you. So we've got, I'm going to go second. So Eden Miller, Reister, why don't you come up, Eden, and let's have you introduce your second plan. So Eden's going to share a few words. He was a Chapel student, a Franklin student, and now he's moving into West.
When I went to Chapel, there were the teachers were teaching us about many things, not just about things in America, but also in other countries. And I think that has really helped me learn about the world. I also really like the idea about IB profiles and IB attitudes, because that helps us be kinder to people and think about the actions before we do them. I also like that IB makes us think about other races, genders, and other classes, and not just about ourselves. And I think IB has made me a better person than I would have been.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baker from Franklin.
Good afternoon. As I said before, my name is Zach Baker. I teach music, music department chair at Franklin. I just want to share a little bit about my thoughts and opinions on IB as a program itself. I wholeheartedly believe that IB is a very, very strong program, that when it's implemented with fidelity, when it's implemented in a very strong way, that becomes the foundation of a school. I believe that it can absolutely transform a school community. I believe that I've seen how it helps students think outside of themselves, as Amy kind of just shared. It helps students think about international issues. It helps students see others for who they are. It's not just about teaching content. I definitely consider myself a music educator, but really through IB, it's much bigger than that. It's teaching students how to process in a deeper way. It's teaching students how to ask questions, how to inquire. It's teaching students how to think about the questions that really go behind the content. And it's not just about, did you learn how to play quarter notes? I feel strongly about IB. I love teaching it. I've grown every single year that I have been teaching it, and definitely am in full support of the IB program.
Thank you.
Chloe Hoffman, a West student.
I'm Chloe Hoffman. I will be a senior and a political candidate next year at West High. Personally, I have experienced the IB system like the IB through Franklin as well as West now. Overall, I feel like there's a lot of advantages to it, especially being able to see everything from a more all-inclusive perspective. Sometimes in regular classes, it's kind of like a one and done system where you learn it this way and that's kind of what you're taught. But I feel like IB, especially with how all of the different classes intertwine at different points, you get more of that all-inclusive perspective and you're able to apply that to like your basic life and your career and your like home life. And I feel like it's very valuable in that sense, being able to understand everything from more global context, which is another like what IB is all about essentially. I also personally feel like it's important to stress like consistency throughout it, like being able to consistently practice what IB like wants you to be able to confidently do is something that's not easily learned because it is specific and there are different like there's just specific points you have to hit and those are valuable things to learn, but it takes time to understand them and to be able to kind of easily identify them when you're doing like real life projects or things for your career. And I think that being able to consistently practice those things that you get from being like a full diploma student or even taking like MIT courses is something invaluable that many students will be able to use throughout their lives.
Thank you. All right, and
Do you like it?
I also like pizza.
I get it.
all right.
I do too.
Vicente, thank you very much, and all the adults around this table, at least once in a while, get a Division I wrong too. All right, thank you so much.
And we have Kelly Sweeto, our teacher. I also like pizza. Write that down. My name is Kelly Sweeto, and I am a 4th grade teacher at Chapel. I've been a teacher at Chapel for all 18 years of my teaching career. When I was asked to speak tonight about the IB program at Chapel, the first thing I did was reflect on our journey to where we are today. As long as I've been there, Chapel teachers have always been passionate about our students and families. Prior to implementing the IB program, we were always searching for ways to engage our students and help them to truly reach the district mission of being college, career, community ready. When our staff committed to becoming become an IB World School, there was a drastic shift in the way I approached teaching. No longer was the classroom centered around me delivering lessons to my students. It was instead about my students and I being on a journey together to inquire about the world. One of the district's core values is equity, and the International Baccalaureate program at Chapel empowers our students to reach their full potential, regardless of where they started at. Many of our students at Chapel come from economically disadvantaged homes, and the IB continuum of Chapel, Franklin, and West provides a path for these students to grow to reach their fullest potential. I've had the privilege of attending several IB trainings over my time at Chapel, and I feel confident as an IB trained teacher that I can guide my students to be critical thinkers who are passionate about the world around them. Being trained as an IB educator has also equipped me to guide my students to be confident communicators of who they are and what they believe, while also helping them be open-minded to the beliefs and values of others. The amount of work that comes with being an IB teacher at times is really significant. But I can honestly say that what I see in my classroom from my students each and every day, and what I hear from my past students who return to visit, the IB program is worth our investment for myself as a teacher, as well as for us as a school district.
Thank you.
Janine Calloway, a parent.
Good afternoon. I'm Janine Calloway. I have two sons at Chapel Elementary. I have a first grader and a fourth grader. We are not from Wisconsin. You probably know that by the way I just said Wisconsin. But Missouri is home for us. And when we moved to the state, what was really important for us was that our children had a well-rounded quality experience. We wanted to make sure that it was a very engaging experience. It wasn't just getting up every day, going to school, and trying to convince them that school was good. And really, Chapel took care of a lot of that. We toured several schools in the area when our kids were in daycare, and it was very evident to us that when we went to Chapel that that was the right school for us. Right away, we just felt the passion from the teachers in the building. I mean, just in the classroom, in the hallways, even, to the point of the individuals working the front desk. Like, everyone was very passionate about the success of the kids. And that was just so evident to us. Those were things that were important to us because we knew that would impact the experience that our kids had. In addition to that, I guess I was reflecting on what's been probably the most impactful thing that we've seen in our kids, and this idea of being more, social and emotional aware of things. And I've just been so impressed as our kids have gotten older, how mature they've become in that space. And sometimes, they challenge us around certain topics, that it's just been really nice to have, in my opinion, more mature conversations with them about what's going on in the world and what things really impact the type of life that they live. In addition to that, I work for a global company in the area, and those social and emotional skills, those are important skills. They're hard to teach adults, and some days I'm just so impressed that my kids are already getting that experience. So I think just in general, I've been overall impressed with the passion of the students, or the passion of the faculty, the staff. I was just so grateful for how the school navigated through COVID in terms of keeping the kids engaged. I was really nervous about that, and I just was so impressed with the amount of care and attention the teachers gave the students to keep them engaged, but more importantly, make sure that they knew that they were special and recognize them for their resiliency. So overall, we felt like we made a fantastic decision taking our kids to Chapel, and looking forward to continuing through the IB track.
Thank you.
So at this point, we, as you're aware, we had a consultant a couple of years ago come in and work with our schools and do an evaluation between the three schools. Diane Padula, and she provided that report. One of the things that was in there is allowing us to become a continuum. From that report and the relationship that we were able to forge between the three schools, we created a 3 to 5 year action plan. And I'd like Greg to start with our first action step.
All right, thank you. So looking at this document, I believe you all have received this document either in an email or hard copy, correct? Okay, so 2020 through 2022, developing a plan for converting a continuum with the International Baccalaureate Organization, develop a marketing plan for the continuum, and develop IB continuum policies for K through 12. 23, 24 would be IB evaluation visit in the International Baccalaureate Organization, and that would be where we are all on the same evaluation cycle. And then 24, 25, create an IB a night culminating projects open house for continuing in the community at all three schools. Considerations for evaluation as a continuum were 20% savings on annual fees, one visit every 5 years for all programs, increasing the efficiency of continuum, and then also some possible changes in community project
So some of the excitement of becoming a continuum, we all started in individual programs and understood those programs as a staff and a community. We are at the point where we are ready to move forward to the next step and the next level of IB and bring the power of a true continuum to us. And that allows us to start to look at unit planning differently. And so the MYP, as you know, goes from west down to Franklin, so it's a 6-10 program. And they will be able to, content-based, start to plan together, start to create curriculum to make sure that it is making sense. So in the first couple of years, some of these things we've already begun conversations on. This year, West has begun piloting or grading system in the English language arts that is different than what they have been doing. They will be looking at the grade point average grading scale that encourages student enrollment in advanced coursework. They will also be developing an IB criterion-based grading scale that communicates a clear statement about student learning and student opportunity. That criterion-based grading will align to what Franklin is currently doing and has been doing. Right now, there is not a cohesive change from 8th grade to 9th grade, and this allows students to have more cohesion in their grading practices and assessment practices between the two schools. West will continue to promote IB philosophy that content grading is part of assessment of learning versus assessment for learning. And Michelle can talk to that more specifically, but that allows a more equitable approach in our grading practices.
I think too, it aligns more closely to what the actual board policy is on grading, and it is very clear in board policy that we must grade based on learning and not on behaviors. And a criterion-based approach to grading actually takes away all of those issues with grading on behavior.
We will continue, we need to do our policies together, so we will be coming together as a large staff in February, and we'll be writing policies for assessment, for academic honesty, for inclusion of our students, for our 4K through 12th grade. So that kids going through that continuum track will have consistent policies in place. Those policies are first looked at through the board, so we implement board policy, of course, that is our primary responsibility. And then those pieces that we need to more clearly define from there, those are the pieces that will go into our policies. Chapel will continue using the primary years program units to guide our literacy components within the units. Our common assessments, data collected, will be done at authentic times during the year, with reflection and revision occurring after those data points. The curriculum resources offered at the district will be utilized when appropriate. All our teaching will be inquiry-based. Chapel's focus will be continuing to explore what are the skills spoke about is the skills to access content. So it isn't just about the content, it is about the skills that we provide students to access things in the future and in the workplace. And the 23-24 school year, 20% or more of the taught curriculum, so teachers can write in their unit plans ways to teach inquiry, but we want to make sure that that's actually how it's being delivered, that it isn't just a taught or a written curriculum, but the taught curriculum at the middle years program at Franklin and West will be inquiry-based and inquiry-driven in all courses. By that point also, West will have full implementation of IB standards-based grading. The following year, the primary years program will be looking at the criteria that the middle years program uses and looking to utilize or expose our fifth grade students to some of the rubric-based language to prepare them for that transition to Franklin. One of the things I think we're excited about as a continuum is one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure that between the schools we have universal language built into our repertoire. And we have in the past, several years ago, we built some awareness around our programs when we came together. This August, we are going to be doing our first professional learning together as 3 buildings, as a continuum. And we are going to be building universal language about what inquiry teaching is and what the approaches to learning and how we can utilize visible thinking routines to make those come to life. Those will be 2 classes that all staff members in our 3 buildings will attend. They are being taught by our educators, and they have teamed up across building. And so we're really excited about that piece of it. We continue to do an onboarding process for our new teachers. We will continue to build a professional development plan based on feedback from our first go around with that. Early release days, we are all aligned for dismissal of early release. So as I said in February, we will be writing our first policies together to be implemented for the following school year. We will continue to create time for vertical and horizontal planning across the buildings so that those content-based teachers are able to have that time to plan efficiently. We also will be continue to work with district staff, inviting them to see the process, to be present in part of the process, so they have a deeper understanding of what we are asking our teachers to do and how we are delivering that content. And always opening that opportunity to attend professional learning, or if there are on-site trainings, looking at some of those on-site trainings as well. We will, the following 22 to 24, I think the only things in there, we really want to focus on those transition years, 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th, to make sure that we have the strongest transition that we can for our students. We also are hopeful to implement teacher walkthroughs, shadowing, peer coaching, and school tours across continuum buildings so that our teachers can start to learn from each other and not just within our own buildings, but we can truly learn as a continuum. Now, accountability. Yep.
So we want to work with the district to define points of achievement to measure school and success programs. So we want to be held accountable for the success of our IB programs. And so we want, what our real desire is that demand the best of us in our IB-ness and figure out these are the markers that we want you to meet, and this is what we want an IB school to look like. And I think up until this point, those demands have not been made of us, and we really need that from the school board and from district office, because we want to be a premier IB program in the state of Wisconsin, if not even the nation. West is going to be investigating an IB excellent and equity framework. And this is really around a shift in philosophy for especially in the diploma program, where it is about all kids and not just the elite kids. And so that IB is for everyone, and everyone that hits our door, we can teach, and we can take them where they're at and put them at a place that is internationally minded and critical and all the things that the kids embody today. Okay. So the next is Chapel and Franklin. They're going to be looking at PBIS and the self-assessment survey that incorporates IB language and reflects actual teachings within the building. So instead of just using the PBIS, really looking at what is IB and what expectations do we have as for our student learners through the IB learner profile, and putting that into those frameworks. Then revamping the behavior and student advise me language to reflect IB learner profile, our approaches to learning, vertical alignment between the schools, connected to privilege and school citizenship based on restorative practice, appropriate to the age and connected to our social and emotional learning with each respective school. A blend in the IB action program and program development plan with the school success plan. So our action plan that we have here will also be reflected in our school success plans, is basically what we're asking for there. And we want by 23-24 for our students to be meeting academic standards and behavioral goals that are set out by the district. And then in 24, continuum, we want to not only meet, but exceed expectations by that time period. This is to West, and this is the program that Noah, thank you. I was going to say Nathan, but Noah alluded to in his open comment, and that is the CP program. IB is an international program. It stems from an international understanding of education, and it was brought to the United States. And so it only brought in one piece of that, and that is the DP program. Internationally, it is normal for students to choose between a university track and a technology track. And so a kid can choose to go to college, or they can choose to go and do a tech school kind of accounting career, right? You know, and so that those are the two paths that are offered internationally. IB is now expanding its program to kind of match that as well. So we'll have students who can take DP classes, which are very, the CP kids will be taking DP classes, but their program will center on more hands-on learning if they want to go into entrepreneurship, if they want to go into a foods kind of thing, if they want to go into nursing, all of those types of more route towards the technical schools. That's what a CP program will help students do. That is, and then it talks about the different ways that we're doing it right now. Right now, it's in the exploratory stage where we're connecting with different stakeholders to make it happen. We are going to be introducing it to the school board formally, but that won't be happening today. Just to give you a brief outline of it. And then we need to train our careers program coordinator. By 22-23, we'll develop 2 career pathways. We'll revamp our design courses at the NYP level, bring to school board for approval, and apply to the IB for the careers program accreditation. Then in 23-24, we will begin recruiting students, evaluate and add designated time for NYP design, and then begin our first careers program forward. Is that me?
So staffing is one of our other pieces that we have in there. We want to market our schools to potential new staff hires. We want to explore opportunities for them, whether that be incentives to apply or to work at our schools, streamline the process So we're not necessarily losing candidates in a lengthy interview process or decision-making process. We are wanting to have conversations and exploring opportunities for our coordinators to become 11-month employees versus 10-month employees. They all have various responsibilities at our school outside of the academic time when students are with us. We have been working at having the traveling teachers share between ITD schools, especially in that secondary blend, and again, we have been making a lot of these things. We have already started that process in. What is the commitment of staff at the time of hire? And we're specifically talking about the investment of training that it takes for teachers to work in our buildings. We also want to continue, any one of us around this table can be an advocate for IB, and we can probably, you all over the place. But we want to continue to educate everyone who's not part of our inner circle about what IB is and what is the commitment that it's taking, and what do we need to do for our teachers to be IB educators. What does it mean to be an IB administrator, team member, the commitment that it takes, the passion that it takes. What are the long-term options? Allowing staff to stay consistent in their content area versus saying you're going to teach this content this year and now you're going to go and learn a whole new content next year. There's a depth of understanding that's required in IB, and that is becomes a difficulty for those teachers. And so we want to continue to advocate and find ways that we're not doing that to teachers. We are looking at a new course implementation cycle that's responsive to the immediate needs of students, and basically we want to use data that's coming from our students and then plan from there, right? And plan for the success of those students based on the interests and the needs of those students at the time.
So Franklin and West, with the advisory, we are looking at outlining our approaches to learning, and also social emotional during that advisory, and having a cohesive program between both schools. Create a stakeholder team that is thoughtful to blend our AVID strategies with our IB courses, which isn't going to be that hard because it's very, very common languages. And then, which is the next thing is kind of exciting. The personal project is now going to be given some credit by the DPI, and so for our students to take an opportunity to have that credit, we would like the personal project to be on all of our sophomore schedules as a period 10, and then we would moderate the personal project and the development of it through that advisory period through a tool that we bought this school year called Efficiency that will help individualize this advisory time for students. Okay.
I think in closing of our action plan,
the only thing I want to say is that I think it's super remarkable that an elementary school teacher or a principal, could talk about what's going on at the high school that she feeds into and what's going on at the middle school that she feeds into, and to be able to say it with confidence, right? She took on pieces that we've been talking about with great knowledge and understanding. And for me to know what's going on at an elementary school and to know what's going on at a middle school, that's a pretty remarkable thing. That is the power of the continuum. That means that we are passing kids along all the way up to 12 with great care and thought. And I think that is something I really want you guys to know when we talk about this continuum.
I think the other thing that we all want everyone to know and are kind of willing to shout this from the rooftops is we strongly believe that the IB program provides equitable access for all of our students. 100% of our students have the potential to be successful going through this program. And the power in this program is that we can work with them no matter where they come to us. It's not that I have to know this content today. I can work with this content, I can build the skills so that I can be successful. And that's why I think, as you see teachers and parents passionate about this, is because we're finally, I feel, leveling the playing field for some of our families coming in that may have some barriers to their success, and we are providing that equitable access to them so that they can be successful, that they can have choices when they graduate from high school. And again, that's part of that power of being a true IB continuum. So at this point, we will offer up questions.
All right, I'll invite my fellow board members to go, let's put you on the spot, but to go first.
Okay, I do have a question. It sounds really, really wonderful that you have this continuum. Do you have any data right now as to, like, when Chris, you started out, like, do you have a number of kids that have actually gone from kindergarten through 5th grade to middle school yet? Like, is there a percentage that you know that they have stayed in the program?
So we have started to track that, and I see we do have students that have graduated this year that have been through the entire continuum.
Okay.
That's probably one of our first cohorts that I would say were deep enough in the program when they were at Chapel to get a good sound basis. And so we will continue to have those students go through. So we do definitely try to track some of those students through their programming.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a few questions about the careers program. Does that dovetail with the diploma program?
Yes,
So give me an example of a student who's enrolled in the diploma and the careers program and how that meshes together.
Sure. Stephanie?
Okay, so the reason we were interested in the CP program initially was because not all of our students are four-year bound. So we were looking at how this program would meet the needs of our kids that want to do vocational or technical training. And the CP program has very specific requirements of the students. So there's 2 levels of courses in the DP. There's standard level and higher level. A full diploma student would have a full menu of these classes. That would be their whole day. It would be a series of HL and SL classes. But a careers pathway student would have 1 SL class, 1 HL class, in whatever they're interested, and then would create a very customized pathway from there where they might have a match of dual credit classes where they actually go to TC and take a class. They'll actually have to do mentorships within businesses in their subject area. They have to do a foreign language independent study. They have to do an ethics program, and this is all sort of satellites around a core class that pulls all these things into a very customized vocational pathway. So they have the rigor of a couple IB classes, but then from there it's a mix and match of vocational and practical training and actual workplace skills and workplace experience.
Did you have more, Brenda?
No, not right now.
Okay. So I have some, but I'd like to go last. I guess I'd offer. Do you have anything to add, Vicki, or anything you'd like to maybe get more emphasis on that you'd like to hear a little bit more about?
The only thing I would say is a compliment to our leaders at the school for doing this work. It was clear when we first started talking about what the continuum could look like that you were committed to making this happen. So thank you for your dedication and thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Murley, anything to add?
Nope, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, before I take it, I guess I'd like to just see if we could. Okay, so in the first meeting, I can't establish a precedent of us like getting out of here 70 minutes early. I can't do this. People get sick all the time. What I would like to do though is offer. Is there anything? And this has been a great presentation from from administration. Is there anything additional that staff members like to add or share from your perspective inside the building with your role? Which I'm sure there's a lot. Any success stories? What attracted you to IB as an IB educator? Anybody?
I'll go ahead.
Thank you. Yes.
Denise Redmond, I teach at West right now, but I was at Franklin for 4 years, I believe. So I went through the entire process. I was teaching 8th grade. As far as math is concerned, right now we have this disconnect going from NYP 3, which NYP Math 3, I have to get used to that, into Algebra 1. Because they're learning this language all the way through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They're learning how to inquire, they're learning how to investigate, and then if they jump into Algebra 1, it's not there. And then we expect them to take a DP course. We would love them to take a DP course, and then they have that 2-year disconnect if they go about the traditional path. And that's why we're rolling out NYP 4 and NYP 5, and this year was a little difficult to see, but we are hoping that NYP 4 and NYP 5 gives us that chance to keep that investigating, to keep that inquiry-based learning through the entire continuum, because they're doing it in the elementary school, we were doing it in the middle school, and now doing it at the high school. It gives everybody an opportunity to learn math a different way. I think we were all taught math the same way. Here you go, this is how it's done, do it. And that's not the way the world works anymore. Most kids don't understand math through that, like sit and get and do it, spit it back at me. I've actually seen more success with students being able to, at the middle school level, because that's where I had most of my time, learn it for themselves and then, wait a second, I get how this works. I can see where this is applied elsewhere. Oh, we did this already. That continuum is super important for giving them the opportunity to be able to take a DP course and get that college credit. As far as standards, our standards are being met. We are watching the district standards. We are making sure that all district standards are being met in our math and NYP curriculum. So all Algebra 1 standards, Geometry standards, and Algebra 2 standards are being met through the NYP and DP curriculum.
Thank you. Anyone else on staff?
I'm going to talk, and I hope I don't cry. Michelle knows I cry when I tell the story. But my son did not speak when he was a child. And he talked with a machine, a TI talker, and he used a PEC system, and he learned sign language, and he screamed high on autism scale. And I put him at Aldo Leopold. We held him back a ways, and he had all these different kinds of OT, PT, all kinds of therapies. And when it came to be time for him to pick a high school, I put him here because I want to keep an eye on him. And I enrolled him here, and the IB program had just begun. And we decided not to send his IEP with him and just let the chips fall where they may, just see how it went if nobody knew he was special ed. And I kept that secret until he graduated high school. He graduated 7th in his class, went to Madison, graduated got his undergraduate, is finishing medical school right now, and is in his second pharmacy rotation. And I don't think he could have done it without IB. Because IB lets the kids, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. It meets them where they are. There's no ceiling, there's no limit on what they can do. It gives them the skills and the foundation they need to take themselves as far in inquiry as they can. Thanks, Michelle. And if he was sitting here right now, he would tell you that he learned so much here in the IB program that his first 2 years at the university were a breeze. He learned how to do it, lab reports at professional level in high school. He developed his own mathematical studies that he didn't need to do until he was in grad school here in junior year of high school. There is no, I cannot possibly express the value of inquiry-based education and the idea of putting a kid not in the seat as a student, but as a practitioner in that core area. When you're in history, you're a historian. When you're in math, you're a mathematician. When you're in English, you're a critic, you're a writer. Nothing else comes close. And there's just, I can't say enough about it. So when Michelle asked me to do DP, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm an English teacher. I want to be an English teacher. I have no interest in being a DP coordinator. And then I decided that I was going to step up because people believed in it more than me. So there you go. There's my story.
I have to say, Stephanie, so I know your son.
Yes.
I worked with your son. Dylan was one of the most memorable student leaders from Operation Snowball, which is on pause right now because it's an overnight retreat, but we did an overnight leadership development with drug alcohol prevention and diversity focus. And you're gonna cry again, but if I were to put together a list of, if I had to put together a list of the top 10 kids I've worked with ever for leadership aptitude, he'd be on it. And I have a mask on, so you can't see that my jaw is on the floor about the number of challenges he had prior, because I would have never, and I know that was the plan, which I learned now, 10 years later, that the plan was for no one to ever find out. I would never have imagined. Now, of course, that includes a lot of things done right in the early years too, before he was in IB. But certainly it's an amazing testament to Wes and to IB. Is he? I had thought maybe he was going to be a pharmacist. Is he doing? He's doing a pharmacist. Okay.
Yep. So he's right now. Today was his very first day in his second rotation. He is at Oneida, the Native Reservation, doing a rotation in their medical center right now.
Wonderful. So then when will we get to see him?
So he'll be dispensing drugs early next spring.
Early next spring. That's wonderful. Anyone else like to add before? Yes.
My name is Marisa Way, and I just retired from Chapel. I am a 35-year public school teacher, educator. I've been a staff development coordinator with Dexter in West Pier many years ago. My last 14 years, I went back to the classroom, and I went to Chapel. And 11 of those years, I worked in the IB program. I think one of the advantages of IB over all the other programs that I have taught, I've taught in 4 different school districts, is the fact that the kids see an interconnection between what they're learning with themselves and with other content areas. With the 6 transdisciplinary themes that override all of our units, whether it's who we are, sharing the planet, where we are in place and time, the kids have touch points under each of those themes. And as a teacher where I taught 5th grade, 3rd grade, and kindergarten, the kids learn that theme as the core, and the reading, the writing, the math, the science, social studies, all go back to that theme. So my kinders this year knew that one of our themes was humans take responsibility for the caregiver, but everything we were reading in from our guided reading group to our shared readings all tied back to that central idea. What we were learning in math, we looked at how things change and how the cause and effect happens. So that goes in. Our science experiments tied into it. Historical events tied into it. World events that were going on tied into that. So all of their learning is keyed around that central idea and how the IB profile attributes tie into that. How are we being caring? How are we being open-minded? How are we being knowledgeable? How are we being inquirers? All of that ties together, which then gives you a higher level of understanding. And the other big key is that it promotes action. The kids are not being told to learn this for the sake of the grade. You're being taught to learn this because you're going to use it in the world. That action and agency part is hugely different than what be so much different than any other program that we have. And having it K-12 is what lets kids who may not be successful in another program be able to see, oh, if I understand why I need to learn this, or why reading is going to help me get better and more knowledgeable, the better they're going to be able to take on any learning challenge, whether it's a career and a 2-year or a 4-year school, they're going to have the skills available for them.
If you don't mind, is there the idea of, like we talked about the cross-disciplinary, cross-curricular, it's sometimes hard to like wrap your head around if you're not living it every day. And I know that there's, you know, a complex unit design and everything, but if you could, since you alluded to it, or if someone else wants to jump in, could just a short example of where something might have, you might have had a good experience where things worked in a cross-curricular way, because it's hard to, you know, when we talk about the concept, I know what it means, I don't know what it looks like.
So Andrew, when I do tours with parents, this is my kind of go-to example because people can remember this. So if you remember studying the American Revolution when you were in school, there was memorizing of dates and battles, and we kind of spit that back onto an assessment. And most of us couldn't really connect that to future learning, didn't understand why we were learning it, cool songs maybe, but that was the extent. So how we would do that differently, we're still required to teach that as a state standard. However, what we're going to do is look at the concept of conflict. So how does conflict impact societies? So I'm going to be studying about conflict and the impact it has. Within that concept, I'm going to study the American Revolution, and I may study other battles from other parts of the world or the United States. So then, and I'm going to do that across curriculum. I'm going to do that reading, writing, social studies. I can do that in art. I can do that in music. How is art used in times of conflict? How is music used in times of conflict? So if there's a new conflict that occurs in their lives, which is probably a high likelihood, those students would be able to transfer that information by indicating, I know what conflict means. I understand that conflict can be a reason for geographically, it could be a religious reason, whatever that is, I can analyze then this new situation in my lifetime because I understood what conflict was. I wasn't looking at a single event in time, I understood a big concept over time. And so that's usually the biggest example that I give to parents because it's everyone remembers studying and memorizing the American Revolution.
Okay, so you would then, obviously it's a social studies content would be specific to it, and then you would perhaps read books related to the topic in ELA.
So yep, we could read about conflicts that characters are having in the book. We could read about the American Revolution. We could read about other battles. We can bring that literacy component even into our FIED area. How do we resolve conflicts in a team sport, in social situations? We can carry that through in multiple areas. So they can see that this concept is not just, it's multifaceted. And so we can attack it from all different ways. So there might be through music, we can understand how is music used in conflict. So they can see that this concept is not just static.
So then, you mentioned conflicts. Are there different? You would obviously cover all themes when there's a natural opportunity that presents itself. Are there certain portions of the year where one of the focuses is primary then, or not necessarily?
So when we develop, we have, for example, he says we have 6 themes that we teach under, and what we have done is we've created those units, and I can sit in more depth and go through our entire program of inquiry with you. But we have created those units. Then the next layer that we do is we do take our Common Core, just like the high school said. We have counted all of our standards that are required at district, state, national level. we have them embedded into our practice. We identify common assessments during our planning time. We identify the learning engagements or the ways that we're going to get to that central idea. And the assessment piece that we use is always a transfer skill. So we never ask kids to spit it back on a test because that's not learning, that's memorizing. And so we always ask them to transfer the skills that they learned in their units to a new situation that they have not had exposure to. Because if they can apply it to a new situation, then they've learned that content, and that's where the power in our program is able to be seen.
And it's really cool when we pick up from their 6 themes, their 6 global contexts in the NYP at Franklin. Again, where everything is centered around that. The question I often ask our teachers is, we're using our content to teach what? And so that's really where that comes into. So again, so we don't lose the content at all, but we attach it to that with different lenses. I've had the privilege of being here since the beginning of IB, way back when DP was first coming as the curriculum worker for the district, and seeing all the programs come through. And I've had a better privilege of working with so many teachers and seeing the transformation of teaching their math, but then kind of like ahas of, oh, you know, the kids can't find the patterns. I don't need to tell them this. Why is everything times 0, 0? We all just, okay, that's what it is. Their kids discovered it. You know, those, and so we have that twist. You know, IB for us is a verb. And so how we get an IB, what we're doing, and look at that global context on that. And again, it's just that continuum, we all have the same in our profile, which is learning now has come through all the programs, so I might get started with that. And IB's done a great job with also revamping the programs to make sure they're aligned well, because they were, made in isolation kind of, you know, especially with the DP in the 60s and the movement that happened there, and the history of when the NYP, UFP, and the CP came along.
Anything else from board members?
I just can't wait to see it in the fall, because I'm coming.
You're already a mentor.
No? Okay. I mean, I have several. I just wanted to make sure that everyone got a chance to speak. So, all right. Do people? Anyone here done the true colors percent green, orange, blue, gold? Okay. So I'm usually when I've taken it, I think I got a absolute max 20 on what? Someone tell me. You know.
Green.
Yes, green. So because I'm green, if you know what that means, then I kind of let everyone go, and then I pick up some of the unasked questions. So when I do that, I just want to make it clear that I'm not asking you to get sold on IB because I'm sold on IB. I have been all along, and I've had this reputation because I've asked certain questions about specifics, about is one pathway or two pathways. Does that mean Becker doesn't like IB? It never meant Becker doesn't like IB. It's about having the right options for the right kids. So I would like to ask a bit about, I guess mostly high school here, about number of students taking a course, and number of students choosing full diploma. But before I ask that, and I realize that the number isn't enormous compared to the size of West High, but it's also for balance the number of IB courses taken by 400 and some high schools in the state minus a few is 0. All right. So with that being in mind, Michelle, can you just tell us a little bit about the numbers of kids? And I know full deployment is not something everyone will choose, but the numbers, doing at least one course, and also how full deployment enrollees have gone over the years?
So COVID has put a dent in things because COVID has put a dent in everything.
Sure.
So we're going to have to do some recovery from that. And that is to be very clear. We lost most of our diploma candidates, and we did have one this year that we were able to graduate, right? Last year, how many did we graduate?
1,000. So the number that we had last year of kids that registered, at 53 students registered to take at least one course. And I had 12 diploma candidates, of which 5 received the full diploma. The average points that they were awarded was 28 points, which is a lot. And the average number of credits they got was crazy. Last year we had 2 students that got full rides to Madison and 32 and 36 credits respectively. Out of those 5 ones that actually got full. So our candidates registered in the session hovers anywhere between, I think our high water mark was 79 and our low water mark was last year at 53 because COVID affected our last year's students as well as this year. There were students that once we dismissed in March had to finish their internals completely independently with no support from teachers. So that gives you an idea. So that's roughly, it's more than a third of our students will take at least one course.
Okay.
Yeah, so the statistics I have that we have 100% of our West Full Diploma IB students go on to a 4-year college. 98% of the full diploma students receive a scholarship grant or a financial award. And I can tell you that our scholarship money is proportional to how many IB candidates we have. So the more IB candidates we have, the more money we get in scholarships. And that's a very clear correlation that I've seen in the last 4 years that I've been here. 65% of the West IB students have received college credit. 48% of West students are enrolled in 1 or more IB courses. It doubles the number of scholarship awards for West students.
I have numbers for this year too, and like this is our COVID year, this was this last set. 8 of the top 10 ranked students in our class were at least in 3 or more IB classes. 18 of our IB program students were honored with awarded scholarship at senior honors night, and there were 72 total course examinations. Even in this extremely difficult last 18 months, I still had 25 students complete course certificate work and go forward. So I know it's bad, but 50% of what we had is really not terrible considering the situation they were learning under.
And I have, I intentionally asked over the years because this year was atypical. So not, I'll be clear that I do not doubt that IB classes can be for anybody, and we have, and in most, as you know, obviously, many places you don't even get to take IB courses unless you test into the program, and you for sure don't get to go for the full diploma unless you test in and all. Are there any other places that public schools that offer IB that you don't have to test into the program? There are some.
When I was teaching overseas and I was in China, you just had to pay the money to go to school there. You didn't have to test into anything, you know.
Sure.
I don't know if that was
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, he taught him to.
Most of that, even the ones that students apply to get into, they don't have to test or anything. It's just a matter of school choosing into it. So when you look at our CE system and WAPI system, there is no screening. It's just that students choice into it. But there are also in the state of Wisconsin a number of situations like we have where their whole program is IB. So if it's your neighborhood school to where you are, that's what you're doing. Green Lake has roll-the-wall, like county law. So there's a number of things. You can actually speak to that right now.
And I don't know if it's, I'm 10 years out from it, but when I was in Wausau, Wausau West is an AP school, Wausau East is an IB school, so it again is a neighborhood catchment school. You certainly had the opportunity at that point in time to transition across the river if you wanted to choose one or the other. About 98% of the kids went to school in their catchment area. If you were attending a school that college, postgraduate, or post-high school didn't accept IB, many of those kids took AP tests at the end of their IB coursework for those schools that were looking for that, but it was no threshold for entry.
I want to say something just that we could kind of remove that like elitism feel about the IB because it really is for everybody. We truly believe that, and students who come into the high school, when they get to the DP, they have a choice themselves as well to either take a standard level or a higher level course. So they can choose that pathway themselves, and they can choose where they are and where they feel comfortable. And just that it does give them that opportunity to make a choice as they move forward in their education. So it's not like no one would feel that need to test into it at all. And it's something that anyone can be a part of and grow.
Well, I'm glad we don't. I mean, please don't, that's not where I was going with it. I'm glad we don't.
Sure. Yeah. And also, for people not familiar with it, the DP program is, normally the classes are 2 years. So the kids have 2 years to grow into this content. And I think that's a very different thing than AP, because AP you have to kind of hit the ground running, you know, and like you have 7 months or do or die kind of thing. Whereas IB, you have that 2 years and the exponential growth of a senior versus a junior, you know, it is kind of amazing. I know when I was teaching the DP program, watching my juniors turn into seniors and just sometimes turn it around like crazy, I was just amazed. And that's kind of what I loved about it is I could see a Yahoo junior year and then see a genius in senior year, and that was kind of cool. I know you guys experience that same thing.
It's all about access, and it's just good teaching. And that's what it's about. You know, I mean, giving every kid equitable level platform to come in and access their own learning trajectory of getting the best out of each student. Because we, as educators, administrators, and everything, we need to be more intentional with kids. And when you're intentional with the kid, that gives that kid that very saying that, hey, what Ms. Jensen or Ms. Beal is teaching me is really going to help me when I leave high school. That's what we're trying to do. Develop good community kids and also kids that will be able to go out the way with an open, eyes wide open, look on things that can be successful. And that's what I mean. It's good, free, good teaching. If anybody who knows me knows that I'm stubborn and I don't change, you know. But, you know, 3 years ago, Mr. Hopper and myself went to an IB conference in Minnesota. And that's when the light turned on, you know, with me. Hearing all those different teachers from New Mexico, California, talking about their kids' personal projects and grasping things and what it'll do for families over in Guatemala, things of that nature. I mean, that's good stuff right there. And you can't do that, you know, the teacher's going to be in front of the board all the time, just going through the motions of how things. Keep those kids up, energetic, move around, and really embedded in your learning. That's good stuff right there. And you cannot not be intentional of any kind of kid with access of getting a good education. So that's me.
So I did want to, thank you, I did want to talk a little bit about the, could you just clarify now, not necessarily every course is 2 years, but some are?
Standard level courses, they only need, it's 150 hours, correct? Yeah, so we only need 150 hours seat time for them to qualify for that learning, to be able to sit for the test, right? You know, and so you can get that 150 hours sometimes in 1 year. And so if you can do that in 1 year, that frees up their schedule their senior year or frees up their junior year to do other things if they're a full diploma candidate.
Okay,
well,
so
the majority of the classes are 2 years though. And I think this is an advantage for students that want an AP test because instead of taking the AP test at the end of 7 months, they take the AP test at the end of 2 years. So the handful of students that we have that have taken AP exams based on their IB course curriculum have done very well because they have a deep dive over 2 years in this content area rather than 7 months. So that's also something to think about. It's not really eliminating that opportunity or pathway for the kids.
The flip side is that there's fewer the more of the 2 year courses I'm taking, then perhaps the fewer other opportunities there are. And while it's maybe not as, I mean, we're going to take 4 years of English language arts, so the fact that 2 of them are IB that probably doesn't change availability of things, but if science classes are 2 years, you may get, you would get fewer of them, right?
Yeah, we have 1 year and 2 year options in science. So,
in all of them?
No, not all of
Okay.
them. So, but a student could do like 2 years in bio, or they could do like 1 year in environmental science, or we're hoping to eventually have 1 year chemistry. So there is some mixing and matching, and it's really only the core classes that are 2 years. Most of the elective classes are just 1 year. So psych, like all the business, all those are 1 year. So the students still have a lot of opportunity to do like other elective and explore other interests. I mean, not a ton if they're full diploma, but most of our students aren't full diploma. So there's still quite a bit of room.
So West being not huge, not a huge high school, and I certainly have always been a supporter of, I think running smaller sections in places where there's fewer kids, but there's a good reason to run the section. I've always supported that. I supported that before we had IB. I guess could you speak to the fact though that we have had sections of things that have not run in certain formats. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there may have been certain classes that you could only get in the IB program, and I understand exactly why and supported why we have moved away from like the basic track. I get that, but there are are we going to have something for kids who maybe want to take the standard physics class and maybe would not be as successful or interested in the rigor of IB physics? Because it's okay to want to take physics at a standard 11th, 12th grade level, right? And if we were huge, it wouldn't be an issue. But are there some trade-offs that happen in classes that don't run?
Well, I think that
I think there's a misunderstanding necessarily of rigor, right? Like it's a different way of learning.
so. Mr. Hoffman is also taught IB music before became an associate principal.
So I taught IB music for 6-7 years at a different high school in a different district. And it's not, there's a feeling that it's more rigorous because it's an experience you've never had, right? So when I sit down in a classroom, and anybody here is of a certain age, sits down and is used to what has been taught the same way since 1925, right? When we didn't have a textbook for every student, so teachers lectured because not everybody had access. And then we've continued that process through generations of students. And now we're asking students to sit and ask questions. We're asking students to, here's the information, let's dig into it. I'll help guide you in that process. And so it's a foreign environment for people who dip their toe into it because they've never been necessarily just asked a question and forced to answer it a little bit on their own. As a band director, when we would get done running any passage of music, I would stop and I would say, and then we get done, it would sound great sometimes, right? And we get done, and they'd all be looking at me, and I would say, well, what'd you think? And the beginning of the year, the freshmen especially, when we come to school, didn't know what to say. Because they were so used to, teacher, stop. Trumpets, you did this. Clarinets, you did this. Saxophone section, you did this. Everybody did this. All right, let's do it again. Take my advice here. When I started teaching IB, I started saying, stop. Saxophones, what do you think? Percussion, would you like the sound of that? And that's a real foreign concept for people. And so I think sometimes there's this idea of this rigor. IB is harder. It's not harder. It's a different way of learning. And that's where sometimes, and this is where the continuum comes in, so important. If students are immersed in that type of learning from age 5 and they continue through, and admittedly there's a bit of a hiccup in this 9th and 10th grade spot for us that we are trying to develop, right? And once that is developed, and students in every class they walk in, whether band or medals or math class, whatever it is, are used to have learning in this environment, I think the DP numbers grow. I think students want to take those classes because if they don't get that, if they do get that teacher standing in front of them lecturing and presenting it in the old way, they're going to say, I don't want to be part of this. I want to be part of my education. And that's where I think there's a misnomer as far as like rigor versus new way of doing things.
Okay. So that's fair, but I've talked to students too, and I've heard a lot that it is more, I mean, there is a workload difference, is there not?
Yes.
Okay.
There definitely is. And I would say that with your question about IB physics and physics, it can be together where the kids can make some choices like this is where I'm going to stop because I'm just doing the physics part, you know. But if you want a little extra, here is the little extra, right? You know, and so it can be done in that manner where the kids are getting the basics, but IB adds that extra, right? And which is so important because the issue here is not kids saying, I don't want to take a hard course. It is talking those kids into taking a hard course and believing in themselves and saying, hey, you know what? You can do it no matter what you're coming from, no matter where your family's at, what's going on. You can take a challenging course. You absolutely can. And here's how we're going to help you do that. That's our problem last. Our problem isn't that I have a bunch of kids that want to sign up for physics. I have a bunch of kids who are afraid to do the hard stuff because the message is kids that flex don't do hard stuff, right? You know, and they absolutely can. We just have to give them the opportunity to.
And I think that gets back into one of those core things that I think everyone in our staff wants everyone outside of our buildings to understand is that those kids can, and it's our job to teach them differently and understand so they do feel that confidence to take those classes and provide that equitable access to the futures of all of these kids. And we understand the importance of looking and tracking DP numbers, but that's not what we want to do. We want to ensure that all of our kids have an inquiry-based approach to teaching because that will provide a successful life for them. Regardless if they all take a DP, full DP, we understand that's going to be a metric for us, but it's more than that. A true IB school, that's not the only metric that we're going to measure. We have a lot of other ways to measure success for kids.
So it sounds like if what we saw, and yes, it is only one, well, I'm going to say two things, but it would be two metrics. Would you say that if you looked ahead to where we're at in 10 years, if we had say a tripling of number of courses taken versus a tripling of number of full diploma graduates, is the former probably more important?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of implementing CP. The diploma program is very select, not because it's elite, but because not every student needs to have that level of course curriculum for their future pathway. The CP program lets us get that same rigorous, interesting curriculum in the hands of students, but only for the courses that they already are interested in, only the ones that they can apply to their future. And so yes, I absolutely think the metric we should be looking at is how many kids are taking courses, not how many diploma students we have. A diploma student is always going to be a little bit of a special snowflake because that's very rigorous, and you have to have a very set kind of future pathway in order for that to be appealing to you. Sure. On the side of students being in courses and it being too hard, a lot of our students do take the course and choose not to test in it, do take a 2-year course and only do 1 year of it. And this is perfectly permissible because they believe that this is still worth doing. It's more interesting. They have more autonomy over it. It's more project-based. And so we're not only looking at a student who does the full 2 years at the HL level and then takes a massive test at the end. We are very much meeting the kids where they are and matching them to things that they're already highly interested in and already highly motivated to take. So there are more than one way. There is more than one way to go about it.
And I don't know how this metric would be measured, but my metric would be that every kid got surveyed at their senior year and they were asked taking an IB course? Yes. Did you choose? No, I didn't, you know, I went a different pathway. If every kid left knowing that from special ed to ELL students to all of them, if they left with that confidence, yep, I could have gone in if I wanted to, but I chose not to. You know, that's what I would want their mentor to be, is that they felt empowered.
And that, thank you. That's why I did single out a little bit. I kind of, and maybe it's not as prevalent as I thought based on my research, which was just kind of bouncing around. What I looked at in public, obviously private's a different world, but in public high schools with IB programs, it seemed that there actually were quite a few that you have to do some selection and even in many cases, some testing, but in other cases I didn't see testing, but I saw, you know, you have to have so many A's and B's in middle school to even try it, and so that's why it's a nice feature here that, you know, it is open, and it is open to everyone, and we don't have gates. We don't have gates to participate, and that's important. I think just, and perhaps part of this is that the buzz that kids have around IB is, you might have like the full deployment kid who is excited as all heck about the program and loves it, which you have to sign up for something intentionally that has that kind of workload. But you love it, so you're going to tell all your friends about how great it is, and I do have that much schoolwork to do, but you don't understand it's great. That maybe isn't getting through it. So I think but the value where if someone's taking, you know, one of their several courses, it might be their favorite course, but it's not. So there certainly is some of that too, and I'm really, you know, even the schools that have been doing IB for 30 years, you know, they aren't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not common in a public IB school to see half of a class doing full deployment, probably in the U.S., even a quarter. I mean, so, all right. Anything else from board members or administration? I guess I'll call on the student rep to the extent that you know from, if you've had interactions with West kids, do you have anything to add, or do you know anyone who went to West for IB? And I know you're not from West, so if you don't know, that's a perfectly okay answer.
The only thing is, I don't know anyone from West or that took IB, but like I do know AP, like I can get a bunch of those, and like everything they're saying about how you quit learning and you just have to cram everything in, and especially this year, you have to cram everything in and go take the test. That the 2 years does sound like pretty appealing to just like actually get to know it and learn it, and that's like a student's perspective that I honestly didn't even know IB was like an option until a couple of years ago.
And that's part
That's
of
part of
it.
I guess the other thing, it's a question that won't be answered today, but I was on the board for the beginning of at the beginning of when we were pursuing IB, and there was a hope that it would be a large, it would be a big attractor that would bring in kids from other districts. There was a hope as Da Vinci came on that a natural transition would be Da Vinci to West for the IB program. And what it seems to be is that if people came from out of the district to Da Vinci for K-8, they are maybe returning to their home districts, or they're staying in their home district if there's more opportunities to rack up more college credits, which I would be the first to say that's not what, it's wonderful, but it is not what life is all about, is the raw number of college credits. So, 32, 36, 40, whatever the school record might be, is a great thing have, but yes, I think that's important. But do we see a path where, okay, maybe 300 people aren't finding their way to West for IB, but how do we get, how do we get that up to 100, 150 people crossing either intra or inter-district boundaries to come here? Because we have a good story to tell, and I think we're pretty good at telling it. It's just we haven't seen a lot of people change schools for this.
And I think you can get better at telling this story. And that's why we've looked at a marketing tagline, our 4K, it's our Green Bay IB, and it's our path to global perspectives. So we have plans to get out in front of all students to let them know. So if IB, and maybe it's not too late, the coordinators over there.
I want to add something to this, because this is kind of what this is all about, is strengthening the continuum, because we know that we're doing a good job, and we can do way better. We're not doing our part 100% to fidelity, which is what we need in order to go out and get that other recognition. And part of that, it's in the plans to improve our communication between the schools, 6th grade to 5th grade, 9th grade to 8th grade. Are we transitioning those kids in properly? Are we preparing our feeder schools that go in Franklin that do not have the IB? Are we preparing them with some skills, possibly, obviously not IB, because we didn't charge us for that, but giving them that language that we can say, hey, these are some skills that they'll need when they come to Franklin. So we need to do that with ourselves before it'll be recognized by others. And that's what this action plan is about.
Okay, last call, Brenda.
So I'm really interested in the comment you made about the realization of being able to kind of slow the pace and go into depth and things like that. And I wonder if as you're doing your work and looking at marketing, if you pull in students that are from other high schools and say, what do you know, what don't you know, things like that. Because I think your tagline, path to global perspectives, is great, but if you don't know what that means, especially as a middle school or high school kid, you look at that and it's not attracting you to the program. So it's almost as if there's, and I don't know if it becomes a tagline or it's just how you present the program, or it's always hard to wrap the whole program in one tagline and realize that. But so I'm assuming that that's part of what we're talking about in terms of marketing is getting out to students.
We have developed a plan and the coordinators going into schools to talk about the program specifically, and we'd like to start younger. So starting 7th grade, because one of the things that we know is if a kid gets it in their head early on, that becomes their dream, and then they show up for it, right? And so that's kind of what we're starting to do. But I think the other part of it is that we got to be great at what we do, and we have to demand that greatness from us, right? And that alone is going to create a buzz in the community and get some energy going around the IB program. But it's going to take all of everyone. It's going to take DOB, it's going to take the school board, and it's going to take us as well in partnership to promote the program and to say over and over again, this is an amazing option. You guys are missing out on that here. Sorry, that's
I have one last thing, and this is if I'm not specific enough in how I ask it, I know the answer anyways, but this would be what we call a slow pitch softball here. Could you tell me what there was something that when the IB committee came through? There was something, and this stuck with me more. this was the one detail that stuck in my mind, and I've repeated it over and over to people. But what thing or concept they were saying about West students that wasn't necessarily exactly just about their academics or something?
I'm not sure. Andrew, was it around, because I remember something mentioned in the report about how the students were welcoming to others. It was more around that social emotional part of it, and how that stood out to her as an evaluator, being something that was great when she came to West.
Yeah, and that to me, whether it was to have an external evaluator come in and say, yep, you're on good, and I believe our IB scores, our metrics from the evaluator were quite strong also, but what I took away more from those metrics was, and this is a compliment to the school, beyond just IB, but that was where I knew, that was where I went from knowing to really knowing that we picked right for Noah. That Isaiah picked right, although we thought he might have wanted fine arts, and that would have been fine too. But he's coming here next year, so that's really important and a sign of something that's being done really really well here. So.
And I would have to say that relationships and developing relationships, administration with staff, staff with students is a priority, and I can't emphasize that enough. Thoughts? You're just gonna shake your head.
And then teaching that to the IB profile.
Yeah.
And something that we've been working on the last 2 years, and that those profile traits provide a framework for everything revolving around social learning.
Yeah, and when your kids in your building know that they're cared about by the adults in the building, then they're going to care about the adults that do come into the building. And it's all interchanging.
Okay. Thank you. So this was our agenda item for the day, and we've had a lot of good conversation and update about this. We'll have certain things will require policy changes or waivers or modifications that'll come through at the appropriate times then, and we'll be watching for those. So, thank everyone for your attendance and a very informative presentation, some wonderful answers to questions. So. Does the chair just say it's adjourned, or do we move to adjourn?
Just get to say it's adjourned, Andrew.
Okay, and then this 5:43 p.m. meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.